Hey everybody, David here, and today I want to do a video on my top 10 favorite movies that have time travel in it. This is going to be a short and simple list, a list that I conducted of movies that feature time travel. It has to feature time travel heavily in the movie, not just a little bit, but heavily. It has to be a main component in the film. So, I think that's about it. So let's get right to this list. Here we go. At number 10, I have Looper. That's right, Looper is number 10 on my list. This is the movie with Bruce Willis and Joseph Gordon-Levitt. Bruce Willis plays an older version of Joseph Gordon-Levitt. Now, I'm going to be honest, I don't remember the movie too well, but my gut told me it should be in the top 10, and that's why I put it up here. I know Rian Johnson also directed it. This is the movie that kind of put Rian Johnson on the radar and maybe even got him the job to do a Star Wars film that some people either loved or hated. I liked a lot. But yes, Looper on my list at number 10. At number 9, I have Terminator 2 Judgment Day. That's right, Terminator 2, to me, easily the best of the Terminator movies. I had to put it on here on this list. And out of all 5, how many Terminator? There's 6 Terminator movies, I believe. Out of all 6, there's only 5 that had time travel in it. Terminator Salvation is the only one that does not have time travel in it. And I enjoyed that film. But yes, Terminator 2 is the only one that made my list. You know, it has time travel with the Terminator going back in time, as well as the T-1000 hunting down John Connor. It's very similar to the first movie, but obviously taken to the next level, and that's why it's on my list. So obviously one of the best action movies out there as well, and many iconic scenes and lines, so it had to make my list. Moving on to number 8, I have Deadpool 2. Deadpool 2 has time travel in it. It kind of has a Terminator himself. Not really. This one's not a cyber genetic thing. This is actually a person who's just half cyborg. That's right, Cable goes back in time to hunt down this kid. A very Terminator 2-esque type of story, but obviously very funny as well. Ryan Reynolds is great. I love Deadpool 2 just as much as Deadpool 1. I know some people either like one more than the other. I like them both equally, and you're putting time travel into this one. It might take an edge over the first Deadpool for me, just an edge over. But yes, it had to make this list for me. I love the character of Deadpool, and like I said, if you're putting time travel into it, I mean, and come on, even the post-credit scenes, the end credit scenes with him going back in time to kill the Deadpool from X-Men Origins was hilarious. Even him Ryan Reynolds killing himself for doing Green Lantern. I mean, there's some really funny stuff with the idea of, obviously that was more towards the end of the film that they used that a lot, but time travel is a pretty important component in this movie. So moving on, Star Trek's First Contact is at number 7 for me. I'm not the biggest Star Trek fan, but I do like a lot of their films. Not too much of the series. I don't watch the series religiously, but the films I can handle because there's only 13 films, and I got into it during a time where there were only 10. Or no, even before that. The first Star Trek movie I ever watched was Star Trek Generations, which was the 7th film. And I didn't know how important time travel was to the Star Trek universe. And Star Trek First Contact shows that, with the Borg being the villain that goes back in time to 2068 or something like that. A time that we're catching up to, where we're supposed to, contact life out there in the universe, or they're supposed to see that we can invent light speed, although none of that I don't think we're getting close to, especially with things going on in the world right now. I doubt we're halfway there, but look, I doubt aliens will ever come. This was a really cool story, seeing the Borg go back in time to try to stop that from happening. I really enjoyed it. the Borg, for those of you that don't know Star Trek, are kind of like zombies in space. I think it's a great movie. You should check it out if you're not a huge Star Trek fan. This might be one that might get your interest going. Moving on to number 6, I have Edge of Tomorrow. This is a movie with Tom Cruise and Emily Blunt. Some people would call it Groundhog's Day, which Groundhog's Day did not make my list, but in a sci-fi setting, and I'll agree with that. And I think it's a great movie because of that, and that's why it's on my list. I think it's really cool. Especially when you're adding the aliens, and there's some really funny moments. It's been a while since I've seen this one too, but I remember it more freshly than I do Looper. So moving on to number 5, I have Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban. Now some people might say, David, this doesn't really feature too much into the film. Well, the last 40 minutes is a big chunk of the movie. So I'll say it kind of does, and they kind of hint at it earlier on in the movie with Hermione showing up at classes just randomly. That was their hint that she was already using something that would eventually be revealed towards the end of the film. And I never thought about it at the time, but it was kind of cool that a Harry Potter movie pulled a Back to the Future Part 2 on us, except it was Back to the Future Part 2 within the film itself. So I thought that was kind of cool because Back to the Future 2 also had him go back to the first movie. This was just like they had to set all those moments up first, and then when you have Hermione and Harry go back in time and witness the stuff that they just went through couple hours ago, half an hour ago or something, it's like, oh, so that's what that was, and that's how that led up to that. So it's kind of cool seeing how they portrayed that. I thought it was a lot of fun. And funny enough, this was my least favorite Harry Potter movie at the time. And I know a lot of people loved this one as soon as it came out. It was the talk of the town. A lot of people always bring it up on their list. And as I keep revisiting it, I start to see not just the time travel element, but I do see the other elements that people really do love about it. There is a really good story there, especially with Harry and his godfather. Gary Oldman is terrific in it, and it is the first Harry Potter movie where you can feel things starting to mature up a bit. So there you go. Moving on to number 4, I have the 2009 Star Trek film directed by J.J. Abrams. This is the Star Trek movie that really got me interested into Star Trek. I liked Star Trek beforehand, although it was only the Next Generation. That was the only series I actually watched beginning to end because my mom was a fan of the show. But 2009 Star Trek is the one that really made me interested in the mythology of Star Trek. And even though I never went back and watched all the shows because it's way too much for me to follow, that's when I did go back to rewatch all the old films, and I do have an appreciation for those, and those give me enough of the mythology to really appreciate on that level. And I think the time travel element in this, having the villain come back in time, acknowledge that the timeline that fans knew still exists, just now it's going to be different, and this creates an all new timeline, I thought was a lot of fun. And Leonard Nimoy being in there adds richness to it. It was kind of like how when Harrison Ford came back for The Force Awakens. It's a cool moment. Although Leonard Nimoy, I think a lot of people knew was a little bit more open to returning to the franchise, unlike Harrison Ford was. But still, when he does have his moment with Kirk, and then later on with himself, that's some really cool moments. And I do like how the time travel element was played with in this movie by creating a new timeline, but still the old one exists because now Picard is a series still in the old timeline, but that takes place after that moment where Spock was sent back in time. Moving on to number 3 on my list. This one's the classic, Back to the Future. This one has to make people's list of favorite time travel movies. Back to the Future is such an amazing film. It's not just one of my top 10 time travel movies, it's one of my top 10 movies of all time. If I were to do a top 10 movies of all time and maybe combine a few movies here and there, I'm pretty sure Back to the Future would make that list. It's such a great movie, so enjoyable, still holds up to this day. Even the special effects, the special effects were very simple for what they needed it to be, and it just serves its purpose and works still on today's standards. I think there's a lot of jokes there that are still timeless. The movie itself, I believe, is timeless, and setting it in 1985, where the movie was filmed, and then having them go back to 1955, the year my mom was born, is kind of cool. It's like, oh, so that's what America looked like. Well, my mom was born, although she was in Portugal. So, anyways, moving on to my next one at number 2, X-Men: Days of Future Past. Easily my favorite X-Men movie of all time. X-Men: Days of Future Past, the movie that combined the original cast and the first class together, or cast together, and it was beautiful. I'm telling you, I love the future scenes. I love the stuff in the 70s. A lot of obviously references to Back to the Future and Terminator in this movie as well. Every movie you'll see time travel movies reference other time travel movies, especially my next one that I have coming up. But putting that within the X-Men, I remember when I heard the premise of this movie, I did go back and read the comics of Days of Future Past, hearing that it was one of the most popular X-Men comics out there. I decided to read it beforehand to get an idea of what that was going to be like. And yeah, I really enjoyed the comic as well, and seeing how the movie came together was fantastic. And yes, I would also recommend the Road Cut. I think the Road Cut is just as good as the regular cut, and if you decide to put the Road Cut in your X-Men marathons, I'll tell you what, it doesn't ruin anything because the timeline is rebooted anyway. So there you go. Finally, my number 1 time travel movie is Avengers Endgame. Yes, Avengers Endgame is my favorite time travel movie. What can I say? And it's my favorite movie currently of all time, because I'm always with the times. I can let go of nostalgia and say, well, you know what? Back to the Future, I love it, but Endgame gave you a run for its money. I know some people will probably disagree with me on that, and that's fine. We all have different opinions. But then again, time travel, superheroes. It's not a surprise that X-Men: Days of Future Past and Avengers Endgame are my number 1 and 2 on this list. Endgame is just the finale as well to the MCU, or at least the Infinity Saga, whatever you want to call it. I think when they go back in time during that good hour in the movie, the first hour is like setting it all up, right? Thanos is dead. What are we gonna do? I don't know. We're losing hope. And then when they actually start planning things to go back in time, that's when it starts. And it's like, as the directors state and the writers, it's a time heist. They go back in time. They have to steal the stones from certain locations. It's a lot of fun. And seeing where those Avengers go and end up, and seeing familiar moments that we all love. It's kind of like Back to the Future 2 again, except they're going back to different movies, right? They go back to the first Avengers, they go back to Thor: The Dark World, which who knew that would be an important movie down the line, and then the first Guardians of the Galaxy movie when Peter Quill is going to go steal the Power Stone. I mean, there's so many great references throughout those time travel moments, so many cameos and stuff, that it's so much fun. I don't know how anybody can hate Endgame. It's such a great movie. With that being said, okay, I know that people can hate the movie. Just look, this is my opinion. This is my list. Be respectful to it. With that being said, I hope you guys comment below and tell me your lists of your favorite time travel movies. We all have different opinions, and it's all cool. I'm always interested to see what other people out there have on their lists, and there's probably some that I would have considered, and I did have a whole list of so many time travel movies I didn't know what to put on, but this was the 10 that I felt were worthy in being in my top 10. So there you go. I hope you guys like this video. Please subscribe to my channel, and until next time, take care.